Do you need help protecting your finances as you enter retirement? David Dickens of KC Financial Advisors has got you covered. Welcome to the Cover Your Assets KC podcast.
Thanks for joining us on the Cover Your Assets KC podcast. Walter Storholt here with David Dickens, based in Overland Park at KC Financial Advisors. David is the president and wealth advisor there. You can get in touch with us by checking us out online at coveryourassets.kc.com. Great show on the way today. David, did you like to do puzzles when you were younger, jigsaw puzzles and the like?
You know, I did, and as chance would have it, tomorrow I'm hopping on an airplane. My mother lives in Arizona, and I go check in on her at least a couple times a year, and she almost always has a jigsaw puzzle on her breakfast table.
Nice.
Sometimes it's, a puzzle of me and my wife and my kids that I turned, from a picture into
that's cool. Like printed out on one.
Exactly. Other times it's, some place that she's been. It's, but I learned to do puzzles as a little kid in front of the fireplace with my parents and my family. And there's some super fun memories. It's a really fun pastime. And I like them because you can kind of work on them and then stand up and do something else and come back and kind of pick up where you left off.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I think they're a lot of fun to do. Used to love doing them when I was a kid. They do take up a lot of space, so you gotta take that consideration into account. But yeah, there's a nice sense of accomplishment when you figure all those out. We were visiting my niece and nephew a couple of weeks ago, and they were in the midst of working on a puzzle, and I was just helping them out for a couple of minutes. You know what it's like with all your grandkids running around. You spend about 5 minutes on each activity before they get bored and move on to the next thing. So
right.
I would say the jigsaw puzzle, they must be only doing 2 or 3 pieces at a time before they bounce off to another idea. So, but it was fun for that 2 or 3 seconds. I was like, I kind of miss doing these puzzles. This was a lot of fun. So that inspired our topic today, which is how retirement planning is as easy as putting together a jigsaw puzzle. And there are some strategies, and they're relatively basic, when we're putting together jigsaw puzzles that we want to keep in mind, but we can actually apply those exact same strategies to the world of retirement and financial planning. And so we're going to take a look at those things today. And David, what's the first thing when we go to put together a jigsaw puzzle? We look at the box, right? We look at the big picture of what we're going to build, so we kind of just get that overall view.
Exactly, because if you don't know what you're building or you don't know what you're trying to put together...
If you really want a challenge, try building without looking at the box, right?
I can't even imagine. That would be impossible. And frankly, putting together a plan is impossible if you don't know what you're trying to do. So, it's funny, when I meet with brand new people, that's one of the first things I try to figure out is what does the front of your box look like? What is the picture? What are you trying to build? And it's amazing how many people cannot articulate that. So if you take nothing else away from today's podcast, make sure you know what you're trying to create. If you're in your 50s or 60s or, if you're already retired and you're not exactly sure, you're not feeling it, well, maybe it's because you don't have a clear big picture. This doesn't preclude you from your 20s and 30s from having a big picture idea too, because you need to. That doesn't mean it's not going to change. It probably will change, maybe dramatically. But make sure you have that big picture view. It is the most important thing in planning because everything else fits into the picture that you've created. So there are various segments. You got income plan, you got tax minimization plan, inheritance plans, maybe some probate avoidance plans. But you got to know what that big picture looks like for you.
So important. And you're right. It's just kind of funny to really think about. It's such a small step, right? It's something you could easily overlook, like just looking at the box. I mean, because you look at the box from a standpoint of, oh, I want to put together a puzzle of something that looks nice, but you don't realize that even just in that small bit of information gathering, just how much help that gives you when you go to actually put the puzzle together. And when you can refer back to the big picture every once in a while and notice you've got a big splash of blue from the lake or something like that in the middle of the picture and a lot of green in the top left, it starts to help, put things in perspective once again. And it's nice to be able to refer back to every once in a while. You can just see how helpful that is. But how easy it is to just not refer to those things. So yeah, very helpful to have that big picture framework in mind. Speaking of framework, that's typically then the next step of jigsaw strategy. What do we mean by build the framework of the picture, and then how does that relate to the plan?
Yeah, so anybody that's done a jigsaw puzzle, you know that the first thing you do, other than look at the box, is look for every piece that has a straight edge because you're going to build the frame. And without that frame, there's no way you could start in the middle. I've never seen anybody start in the middle of a puzzle. So the framework in your retirement planning, in my world, is always your income plan. Because once you have your retirement income settled in your mind and probably in your bank account, a lot of other things start coming very easily. So usually in retirement income planning, there's some combination of Social Security, pensions. Maybe you have an annuity or two that's going to provide you monthly income. Maybe you have some interest in dividends that are paying you. You might own a rental property or two that are going to have income consequences for you. But getting that down on paper, building that retirement frame, the framework, the income that's going to keep you going until, let's say, age 100 is a super important starting place. So I have clients that are all over the board on this, but I have a number of clients that have a pension and 2 Social Securities, and that's all they need to live on. All their retirement savings is extra. And at age 72, of course, you have to start pulling that out. But their income frame for their retirement jigsaw puzzle was made up of guaranteed sources: pension, Social Security. I have others that have Social Security, no pension, but a nice big juicy 401k. And from that, we have to create a monthly income out of that 401k. That's not a big problem either. It's just different from what they had thought through when they were still working. So getting that income right and getting it set up so that most people are comforted by an automatic income in their retirement that comes every month. So whether that's an automatic pension or an automatic withdrawal from your 401k, your rollover, once you get that set up, a lot of other things just start falling into place.
Something that is also not to be missed here is that some people's framework looks a little bit different, right? Like for me, building a puzzle, just as an example, I love building the edges, which I guess is kind of everybody probably likes to do that particular part. But then I pretty much exclusively build inward from the edges. But I noticed the kids, when they were working on that puzzle, and I assume mom and dad were helping them out with parts of the puzzle, but they were taking a slightly different approach. Yes, they got the edges done, but they probably were referring back to that big picture, and they focused on building out certain regions. So like they didn't know exactly where in the puzzle it would end up, but like if there was a face, they would work on that face, something that had a lot of detail to it, and they would build out that little like section, and then they would just kind of leave it hovering somewhere in the middle, like where they thought it would go eventually. But, you know, they'd have this just like random little patch of things built up. So just a little bit different way of going about the puzzle that I'd never really thought about before, and not how I would do it. But a good example of there's a little bit, you know, there's more than one way to, slice the pie, so to speak. So,
as there is with the retirement pie, you know, that kind of brings to mind when you're looking at the big box, you get your frame done, and all of a sudden you see some patches of color that maybe you have something in there that's an off color of green, or maybe a big orange piece on somebody's shirt, or a big aspen tree that's uniquely colored. And so you can start to piece together. You hunt all those pieces on your table for things that match by color. And so I think there's an analogy there with the retirement jigsaw piece, in that, for instance, maybe you sort your retirement assets by tax status. So most everybody these days has some sort of 401k or IRA rollover, which is tax deferred. A lot of people have built up a nice sized Roth account, which is tax-free when they take the money out. And then they might have a brokerage piece where they earn dividends that are taxed advantageously. You can withdraw money from those pieces, oftentimes from that non-IRA piece, without any tax consequences. So sorting by color on a jigsaw puzzle, a lot of times what we do is sort by tax status with a client's investment portfolios and patch together part of their plan, whether it's an inheritance plan Whether it is an income plan or a tax minimization plan, we sort by tax status. One thing why that's really important, and I know we've talked about it in certain other podcasts, but I have a client who, until they are 72, when their required distributions start, they're going to be in the 12% tax bracket unless they do something out of the ordinary. But once they get to 72, they immediately go to the 24% tax bracket, because with their 2 Social Securities and their required minimum distributions, all of a sudden the IRS is in control of their tax status. So when they are younger than 72, they have an option of causing themselves to be in a higher tax bracket, knowing that when they turn 72, they're going to be in that tax bracket automatically. So without getting into excruciating detail, someone in the 12% bracket could pay, by using some Roth conversion strategies, they could start paying some of the money in the 22% bracket, knowing that when they turn 72, they're going to be in the 24 or 25% bracket at that point, saving themselves tax dollars then by converting at a lower tax bracket now. That's where sorting your jigsaw puzzle by color, sorting it by taxability of your assets, can really help you figure out a tax-related strategy for your assets before you get locked in at age 72 to the tax strategy that the IRS dictates.
That's huge. And I think something really important to remember as well. So we look at the big picture, we build the framework, we sort by color, or in the financial planning world, as you just described for us. And last but not least, one other jigsaw puzzle strategy is to have that end game in mind. Typically, when people build a puzzle, it's not, we're going to build it, and then 3 seconds after we build it, we destroy it and put it back in the box. Usually there's at least a temporary plan for what to do with that built-out puzzle.
Right. Now, I've heard of people putting some lacquer on them and storing them away. I've heard of people putting them in frames,
sure,
so they can look at them. My personal experience is that about a week into it being finished, it gets scraped off the table. The table gets put away, and that particular
puzzle is never to be seen again.
It is literally never to be. It was so enjoyable to put together, and it never, ever gets put together again. So that's where I think the jigsaw puzzle analogy has to break down here. Because what you want to do with your plan, you should spend a good amount of time putting the plan together initially, like you would putting together a jigsaw puzzle. The beautiful thing about your financial plan is when you drag it out next year, you don't start from scratch. You start that review process 90% done. You probably pretty much remember what you did the prior year. And with a few little tweaks, you can determine whether you're still on track, whether you've fallen off track. Maybe your income is lower, maybe your expenses are higher. Whatever that thing is that's caused you to get off track, well, you can identify that. But the key here is that the plan can't be static. It can't be a picture that you put together and then put away. It really needs to be dynamic. And if you're planning with an advisor, with a third party, it's going to be located in software that's real easy to pop back out, and you can identify the things that may have changed, and then you update that plan. If you're doing it yourself, hopefully you have it some way automated that it becomes relatively easy to keep up to date. But either way, the retirement plan can't be a set it and forget it. It's not an exercise to be done because you knew you were supposed to do it. It really needs to be maybe an overworked term, but it needs to be a living document where you can breathe some life into it each year to make sure that it's still a plan that works for you. So I'd strongly encourage you, especially with this last piece, just to make sure that once you get that retirement puzzle put together, you review it on a somewhat regular basis, not monthly, not quarterly, probably annually, to make sure that it's still working for you. And that's where That's where retirement confidence comes from, knowing that you've got a plan that was designed specifically for your situation and that you can pretty easily determine without a whole lot of effort each year, am I still on track? And if you are, you're going to feel really confident about your future.
Hey, the analogies are great, but when they start to break down a little bit, no problem. It presents an opportunity for us to see where retirement and financial planning truly becomes unique. And usually in those areas where it becomes unique is exactly where you see how helpful it is to have somebody help guide you through the process. That person, if you are listening to today's show, can certainly be David Dickens and the team at KC Financial Advisors. If you like some of the advice and information that you receive here on the show, but want to get it in a form that is more detailed to your particular situation, I invite you to reach out for a one-on-one conversation with David. If not, no problem. Keep listening to the show and getting great information. But if you want to have that one-on-one talk, reach out at your convenience at 913-317-1414. That's 913-317-1414. Or go online to coveryourassetskc.com. Interact with us on the website. Lots of great resources there for you. Past shows, other great information. Again, coveryourassetskc.com, the place to check all that out there. David, thank you for the help and the guidance. Go help your mom with that puzzle that's going to be waiting for it, sounds like, when you get to Arizona.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Next week, I will arrive in this chair totally relaxed from my trip to the desert and maybe with a good jigsaw puzzle story to tell you.
You'll have to tell us. What was it, a picture of you guys or a landscape or animals, or what was the flavor of this next one? That'll be great. Safe travels to the desert, and we'll talk to you when you get back.
Thanks, Walter.
All right, thanks, David. And thank you for listening to the show. We'll talk to you next time on Cover Your Assets, KC. Investment advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, LLC, BCM, a registered investment advisor. BCM and KC Financial Advisors are independent of each other. For full disclosures, please visit our website at www.coveryourassetskc.com.